Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we are fortunate to have Rohbair Jean, the CISO at American Financing. Rohbair, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here today with you.
Well, we're lucky to have you, and thanks for joining us. And before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best price. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Rohbair, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about American Financing and your role there as CISO?
Well, to begin with, as a CISO, my role is to pretty much oversee the strategy and the tactical way of bringing us into the fold with regulation, with AI, with everything. And as a CISO, especially for an industry that's heavily regulated as a mortgage industry, so we have to deal with a lot of times. And the problem that a lot of people don't understand about this industry is it's a state regulated. So a lot of times what you're dealing with in New York is not the same as in Iowa or as in Hawaii or what have you. But it kind of keeps you on your toes. You try to have a good strategy to deal with the new regulations, with AI, with with everything in cybersecurity that's coming at you. But we are a smaller organization. And the thing that's happened too, and I'm sure you're aware of that, Matthew, where the past few years with interest rate going up and the industry kind of suffered a lot. So we were lucky enough to still be in business. So but I can tell you it keeps me on my toes, and you have to be almost always try to find ways to be not so much an avant-garde, but at least know exactly what's going on out there when it comes to cybersecurity and how to protect yourself, your business, and your customers.
Yeah, no, I think everybody, the entire world struggles with that, right? I mean, I don't care what your focus is, even if you're one of those, let's say, I don't know, let's say you're a company like SentinelOne or CrowdStrike, no matter what you're doing, even when that's your entire business, I think everybody is struggling to keep up with the rapid pace of the cyber threats. And how do you defend against them? How do you stay ahead of them? And I think that then you take that and you put that burden onto someone like you, who not only has to stay up on that, but now you've got all of these, the regulations, for every different state, along with your federal regulations to be compliant with all of this. And, I'm not naturally drawn to be excited by regulation. So, anytime it's compliance, it's like, right.
Exactly.
Compliance is a tough one. I love security, but when it comes to compliance, it's like, but it's just paperwork. And I know that's not true. I know that, that it's about having the right framework and applying the proper principles to what you're doing to make sure that you are safe, right? That's really the goal. I get that.
Exactly. And the thing is, I can tell you too, is a lot of times companies and the businesses, they take compliance as the all be all. A lot of time compliance is just a threshold. It's just the starting point. Because at times with the way we see things for ourselves, for instance, it's okay, the compliance give us a starting point. Can you have that bare minimum? But it depends on what happens. How many companies in the industry has been hit by a ransomware or this or that? A lot of times, by the time the compliance catch up, if you were still at that level, you may not make it. So that's why sometimes the compliance gives you the kind of a blueprint, the starting point, and yourself, you have to find a way to really make it a more robust, way to kind of protect yourself, especially dealing with customers' information, PII, NPI, et cetera. So you gotta at least step it up a notch.
That reminds me of that. I don't know if you ever saw this picture of compliance versus safety. And
Yes.
it's the motorcycle with the baby in the backpack. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's compliant in some states, but it but it's not safe, right?
Nah, nah.
So it's so funny because what might be compliant might not be safe, and what might be safe, may or may not be compliant. So I think that really, you know, to your point, is a bit of a challenge.
Hmm.
For you may have some great new solution that you want to implement that uses AI that does all these great things, but may not necessarily be. You've got to make sure that that's compliant. It might not be. So how do you deal with stuff like that?
Well, we try to deal, with the NIST framework, especially, and then the most important thing we deal with nowadays is called the GLBA, the Ground Leach Blindly Act, the Congress passed, and kind of gives you certain things, to go by when you're dealing with that. The prime example I can give you, and that the one thing that's gonna keep us on our toes is business insurance nowadays. I remember when I first started doing this 4 years ago, where you fill out the form, it's barely a half a page.
Yep.
Fill out and just like you have this. Okay, that's it. Nowadays, to fill out that insurance form, it's pages after pages after pages, and you have to have proof and everything. And sometimes you may still not get the policy or the level that you want. And the reason for that, at first, it was, insurance company was, okay, we're just getting into that. We didn't know what we were doing. The people selling those policies, they weren't cybersecurity expert. They really didn't know. There's people that were selling either life and health insurance or what have you,
Yep.
and they realized, oh no, we can't do that. We have to make sure we have professionals that can deal with that, because in the back end, when something happened, they have to deal with the losses. So they want to answer those questions way ahead. So the way I see things, like we said, compliance and all those things, it gives you a leg up moving forward, because if you've been doing what you need to do, you crosses all the T's, you dotted all the I's, to the best of your ability. It kind of gives you not so much, an advantage, but it kind of puts you in a better position. And unfortunately, I'd say the one thing that's a common denominator for almost everybody, if you're in business where you're dealing with third parties, vendor management is one of those biggest problem that almost, especially in our industry, that we have. And if you look at how the Targets of the world, the Home Depots of the world, when things happen, you are the face. It doesn't matter if it's a third party, a fourth party, whoever caused that, you are on the hook for that particular situation. You have to deal with it. So that's where we started find a way to kind of put our stamp down, put our foot down, just like, okay, we just like, let's revamp our vendor management. If that person has access to it, especially through API or what have you, whatever way they can access to our system, to our customers' information, what they're doing to protect that information. So that's one thing we've been spending a lot of times, trying to put a handle, wrap our head around it to make sure that we have a good control over it.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit because I think it affects a lot of people, and for a long period of time, people were kind of ignoring vendor management. They're like,
Mhm.
that's their problem. But it's really not. We don't, nobody, kind of succeeds on an island. No, we're interconnected. We're working with others, and that's how we succeed. So how is it that you guys have gone about, that, kind of implementing a kind of robust vendor management system, and then ensuring that you're keeping up with it? Just because they were compliant with your requirements, say January 1st, doesn't mean that by June 1st they're still doing the same thing. So how do you guys deal with that?
So at the initial, the onboarding piece of it, we have a very thorough review of everything. We have a different business unit of the company get together, got the IT piece of it, got a financial piece of it, got everybody bring something to the table. Okay, let's look at that. How long did that? And then on top of that, we have a third party site that we use where they input all that information. And then as a team, it's just like we gonna distribute the work and then come back as a committee to try to review that. I mean, sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, things might fall through a crack, it can happen. But at least you do your due diligence. And for instance, that's something that's really important to have a SOC 2 Type 2, for instance, uh, 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 which means a third party went to your organization for the time period of 365 days, wherever it then started. We can testify, we can give you an attestation that, okay, Matthew's company is they didn't have any breaches, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. And from a financial standpoint, you look at it, are you in the news? Is how much, what your customers are saying about you, what are the people that are using your system, what are they saying about you? So we're gonna we try not to have any, stone unturned, so to speak. Gonna give us an idea exactly what we're getting ourselves into because it's important, especially when you have to deal with people's information, whether it's their email address, their phone number, the credit card information, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of the PCI, PI, level of that. So having that also, the one thing we kind of do is so at least halfway through the year, we try to do, a third party review, so to speak, to find out, ask some questions and everything, and make sure that they abide by certain things, and based on the safeguard, set by FTC, et cetera, et cetera. If you have other third parties that you do deal with, whether you mention Center One or MDR, whoever you have there, you know, what do they have? What kind of, how do they access your system? Do you do some type of log monitoring or what have you? So it's tedious, but sometimes has to be done. And the other thing that I've seen over the years where vulnerability management is when you have your team and so it's a big team, small team, and they have to deal with things, and by the time they try to patch stuff, new stuff already happening. Do you have somewhat a patch management system that you're dealing with? And so we try to kind of balance things out. But to me, that's the most that you can do at times. Things can happen, but at least it gives you peace of mind that you do everything that you do, to the best of your ability to what you have and deal with those situations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's, part of that is having the right tools and having the right resources, whether that's in-house or you're outsourcing it, right? Whether, it's hard, especially as you said, for a smaller company to be able to kind of stand up their own SOC and monitor all of the logs and all of the activity that's going on in all of their accounts. That's cost prohibitive. I mean, you can't be spending $1 million a year just to be monitoring, all of your cloud accounts and your network. So I think it becomes really important that people, have those right partners and do that. I mean, especially the smaller you are, the larger, once you get to that certain level of critical mass where you're like, you know what, we've got 3, security people on all the time, so at any point in time, and we're a global company now, so we've always got people who are there. So why would we need to pay an outside source for 24/7 monitoring when we've got that, we've got enough people on our global team to just be monitoring it now. So then it kind of makes sense. But for the little guys, having that, that's just one little example. Now you've got
Oh yeah.
your, as you said, your patch management, how you do all your vulnerability management assessment constantly ongoing. So, and I think that's a really interesting one. I'm glad you brought that up. So on the vulnerability management, front, what's your recommendation to people of, of similar sizes, right? How do you deal with that? Because it is a game of whack-a-mole, right? You just as you finish patching one thing, there's another. It's a never-ending list of
Yeah,
things to patch and work on and be
it
looking
is.
for. And if you think you're caught up, you
Yeah.
probably missed something, right? So how do you guys deal with that?
Let me bring in this point of view before I answer that. Um, as a smaller entity, you always have to you do a cost benefit analysis to see what works for you. If you're a behemoth, you can afford it, then you can just go ahead directly and have a team handling that. That's why sometimes you have to do with MSPs and MSSPs. These people, the managed services, managed security providers, a lot of times they can do that for you for a fraction of the cost.
That's right.
But at times too, because they're dealing with so many different entities, they kind of have the expertise that can help you with that. So I'd say anybody out there that instead of, since you cannot afford to have your own team, it's good to have that. Or when it comes to monitoring all your logs, ingesting it and everything. And you might have to deal with an MDR solution, like a Sentinel-1, a Rapid7, or there are tons of them out there, that can give you, Arctic Wolf. There's so many good companies out there that can really give you deal that good bang for your buck and gonna give you that peace of mind that you need.
Right.
Um, when it comes to vulnerability management, if you have it in-house, and we've had both. We've had a third party taking care of that for us, and then having it in-house. You just have to have a way to, set those scans on a regular basis, and then talk to the team and sit down and just like, okay, how are we gonna do this? Um, and the other thing too that's important to understand, as much as from a security standpoint, I'm very stickler. Just okay, it's security, we have to deal with it. But at the same time, security does not exist in a vacuum. It's always it's sometimes it's a business decision. If the business, that's why you have to sit down with other leaders in the organization from for other department or business unit. Okay, this particular situation right now, this is what, if this happened, this is what the consequences of this would be. If as it depends on, that's what you talk about. Are you when it comes to security, risk averse, for instance, or there's some people, some business units like, nah, we don't care, it's okay. But at the same time, you have to give them the information so they can make an informed decision. Because a lot of times it's like, well, you tell us what to do. It's like, no, because I'll tell you, if it were for me, we'll have to do everything.
That's right. That's
But at
right.
the same time, I understand that that's not the case. I remember I was at a different company. Back in the day, I worked for Cigna Healthcare,
Yeah.
and back then you're doing vulnerability management, and then they were still using some systems. They were using Vista, Microsoft Vista. But at the same time, when you do that benefit analysis, that tells you, okay, if we replace that particular system, it's going to be $50 million. But if something were to happen and we had to pay for a fine or whatever, it's $10 million. Like, eh, I think we're gonna do that for now, because the business has to realize whether or not they can afford it or not. So
Yeah.
that's why sometimes, as much as I want to push, I want to make sure that the information I'm providing, it's correct, as the right information, so the business leaders can make that decision in consultation with me. So we know that it's the business won't suffer.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, that's really well said. And I think, a lot of people, it's doing those tabletop exercises with, with their kind of fellow C-suite members that are really kind of end up being very eye-opening. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh crap, we really should. And I think for everybody, it's wow, I guess we weren't prepared for this. and maybe we do need to put some more money towards this, or as you said, being able to look at something and say, yeah, would love to, and that makes perfect sense, but financially it doesn't make the most sense when we basically save $40 million by taking this risk. I mean, yeah, that's well said. So do you when you have a situation like that, do you, I mean, I suppose you just you bring it to the you know, to the decision makers, I guess, to the other, invested parties, and then just all work it out together. Not you no need even for a tabletop exercise. When you're like, hey, look, this is we still have a machine on Vista.
Yeah.
It's Vista Pro, so at least there's that. So
So
what do we want to do about it? And oh, by the way, it houses all the PII. Um, you know, so but it's going to be $50 million to replace it. I mean, that's a heck of a conversation to have. I mean,
yeah,
nobody.
that's where a lot of times you over the years it's important to have good documentation, really good documentation. And sometimes, I hate to say it, you have good CYA.
Yeah.
In that we know, and especially in the industry, well, and but I've talked with a lot of CISOs over the years, um, where the what happened to SolarWinds and the way the federal government went straight up and just and that's why you have to be honest with yourself, with your crew, with your team, with the C-suite, with the board, with whoever you're dealing with. You have to give them the information. Sometimes that's not what people want to hear.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I never want to be, but unfortunately, at times it becomes almost like that. You Mr. No. Just like, can we do this? No, you can't do that. So I try not to say no. I change it to yes, but I give you just like if you do that, this is what's happening. If you do this, this is what's happening. I give you the what are are you willing to accept that risk? Is
Right.
your organization, is your unit, ready to accept that risk? And at times when when they realize like, oh, okay, this is not, you know,
Yeah.
but it's important to have those conversations. It's never an easy thing, and to me, it happens in the past, and we remember. Some of us are old enough to remember what happened to Enron, that happened to all those organizations in the past. They would tell you something when in fact they knew how bad it was. I'm not saying you have to be an alarmist. Don't be an alarmist. It's just like, oh, the sky is falling down and everything. But at least if you have the information, you may not want to pass it around to the front line, but at least let everybody know, well, this is what the information we have before we alarm everybody. This is where we stand. This is what we got. What we want to do as a business, moving forward. So, and unfortunately, the way things are turning with ransomware, with so many, especially with AI, they're always like 10, 15, 20 steps ahead of us. We're always trying to catch up.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to find a way to keep yourself informed, whether it's webinar, whether it's a conferences, whether it's a whatever you can get yourself in, reading some on Substacks, whatever you can put your hands on, listen to podcasts like yours and people talking, in the industry. Sometimes they share nuggets of information, stuff they deal with, et cetera, et cetera. You cannot rest in your laurels because in technology, whatever was good yesterday, today it's already obsolete. So a lot of times you have to find a way to keep yourself up to date.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I want to go back to your not being, the no man, right? I think that you kind of use this, the improv rule of yes, and yes, I can do that. And it's going to come with these consequences. Do you want to do
Exactly.
that? And I think that's really nice because, for historically, at least, IT was, especially in kind of the I'd say the medium business to enterprise level, and government at that scale, is often no. Hey, can I even get Adobe on my computer? No, you can't because it's not been approved by blah blah blah, right?
Mhm.
And then when you get into security, I mean, the answer is almost reflexively always no, because we're trying to batten down the hatches for what's currently going on. If we do that, then that opens up these other can of worms and these other issues. And so it's really easy to reflexively be,
Yeah.
Mr. No. But I like this that approach of yes, we can do that, and it comes with these expenses, these consequences, these risks. Is this the business decision we want to make moving forward as an organization? And I think that's really, I think that's a great kind of tidbit and helpful hint for so many people, because it's easy for us to get caught up in the security side of things and be like, no, I got all these compliance, all these
Mhm.
all these regulations, I got all these technical requirements. I'm really trying to keep everybody safe and make sure everything works. And so no, I'd really not like to add that to the mix. But I think you nailed it with that yes and. So I think that's a great one. And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody, because I think that's really, really helpful. Um, but going on off of that, and you kind of segued into AI. I
Mhm.
gotta ask you, and I think it's something that's on kind of everybody's mind, because it's now moving. Not only is security and technology advancing very rapidly, but so is AI. And AI kind of, whether it's umbrella, or whether it touches on and permeates every kind of aspect of technology, whether it's security, whether it's operations, whether it's finance, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
AI is and will be, a growing part of that. So what are you seeing, and what are you looking at, in terms of AI, and things that you guys are either playing with now, or things that you're hoping to kind of implement or see come down the pike for you guys, in terms of the finance industry.
So AI is a very interesting chapter in almost any industry that you're looking at right now. There's some industry that it's really advanced. They're really good at it. They figure a lot of stuff. But at the same time, there's so much that's still unknown when it comes to new applications and things like that. Prime example, you get all those applications out there that would take notes for you. Some of them you might be able to trust, but others you don't know. They gain access to sensitive information, and to your meeting, they take the notes for you and everything. But at the same time, it's an app that you pay or to get access to. Did you go back and read the fine print, and something would have happened, and how if they get hacked or all those things, your proprietary information, you might lose that. So it's like a double-edged sword, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's still you still have to kind of tread carefully. Um, you don't want to completely say no to everything. That's because the thing is, whether you like it or not, technology is there. Especially nowadays when we have people working from home, they may not use your system to do that. They might still have it in background, or their phone or something like that. So you have to find a way to get the happy medium. Um, where and when it comes to AI, the one thing what we're trying to do is like a continuous monitoring, where you can detect anomalies or stuff that you normally wouldn't really be able to do, but AI is allowing you to get that. And the one thing, for instance, that's been really good that we kind of dabbling into where, third party vendor management, AI and stuff like that. Like I said, we're still not quite there yet, but at least that there are a lot of opportunities for industries to get better. For instance, for us in the mortgage industry, for instance, there are so many ways, instead of having, are we still gonna have people calling, make a phone call and help the customers out and everything? But a lot of times nowadays, especially with Gen Zs and et cetera, they want to do stuff online. And then if you have a good chatbot, good AI that can work with that person from start, not necessarily finish, but at least give them but they don't want to deal with you at times. We understand that. But at the same time, you have an older generation, and it's a funny thing to say. We have an office. We've had people to this day showing up at the office bringing a CD with information,
Nice.
bringing a USB connection. So you have to find a happy medium, even though that particular demographic is not as much, but you still have to, if you're in business, you have to find a way to deal with all that type of customers. So that's important. And the last point I'd make too is AI, because of it, the attack surface becomes so large, so it at times it can give you a headache because okay, you don't know where things are coming from. That's why it's good to kind of perhaps start early. I'm not saying you don't have to start even if it's in the personal point of view, start using it early to have a grasp of what's going on because I think if you don't, you don't want to be left behind. And I think the one thing that's going to happen to with that's happening with AI, just like the horse and buggy era, it's completely gone. There's a lot of either industries or businesses or that will not survive AI because they, for one reason or another, they probably rely so much on certain technology that the technology is going to become obsolete, in a few years. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see it.
Totally agree. And I think one of the things that I think is really exciting in the on the security side, and I would go with, bring up Sentinel-1 again, as I think what they're doing there with AI is really fantastic because not only is it that AI when it comes to the endpoint detection and response and being able to see not just anomalies, but watching everything and being able to say intelligently, well, that's not right. Adobe shouldn't be encrypting these files. Let me stop that, right? Or see some novel, some novel code running and be like, that's what is that really what should be happening here, and being able to stop it and flag it and call for a grown up. I think that's all well and good. And I think that's what people kind of expect today when it comes to endpoint, to EDR. But I think what's really exciting about kind of the future of AI is where they're looking to go and kind of dabbling in is where they're using AI in what they call their singularity platform, where you have this AI SIM where you're tying in you'll tie in your firewalls, your network, your Microsoft 365 tenant, your EDR,
Hmm.
everything's tied in now. So you've got like a full on SIM, but now it's all being monitored and quickly assessed using AI. So I think it really leverages that nicely, or will soon leverage it. It's starting to, right? It's early days, but I think the future there is really interesting because while I really love that we've got some really great it kind of managed SOC services, which I think are fantastic, and they
Hmm.
use machine learning. Some use AI, and there's kind of a right fit for different clients, but it always ends up being very kind of labor intensive, and of course that drives up price. But I think the future, what we're going to see is that companies like Sentinel-1, when they've got this AI SIM working really well and it's tied in to everything that the organization is doing, and all of that is being instantly monitored and then fully assessed, not just like with rules, but then using AI to actually assess what's going on intelligently, and then be able to say, hey, look, this is what's happened, this is what we're doing, we stopped this, we've let's say there was I don't know, let's say somebody's email address, their email account got compromised, that it goes in very quickly and handles that using AI. That's fantastic. So for a
Yes.
small organization to be able to like, hey, yeah, I could be paying for this SOC service and the EDR and SIM and logging it, and now you're paying for all these things, and that's the right thing to do. But I think the future, once you add in the AI kind of automation and intelligence, becomes a much more cost effective thing for a small organization, to where now, for a fraction of that cost, they're now
Yeah.
getting a far more superior, product and service that's doing. So I think that's really exciting stuff. And, not to just kind of single out, Sentinel One, but, knowing that that's on their roadmap and that's what they're building towards is really cool. And I think a great kind of use of AI in the security field.
Yeah, and the thing is too, talking about that, whether it's an MSSP or an MDR solution, things like that. If you're not, for instance, I've seen it over the years where some companies they rest on their laurels. Okay, we big enough, we have the name and everything. It's just like, no, you have to always constantly try to innovate,
Yeah.
get yourself better, because a smaller company come out and just get you out. Because we remember, some of the businesses that we grew up with, and go to Sears all the time, to Kmart, and they're no longer there. Those brick and mortars, and I think the same thing is happening with a lot of companies and businesses.
Yeah.
And one other segue, well, not so much a segue, but the use of AI that we've been doing lately that's really been helping is with employee security awareness training.
Nice.
And as much as we can talk about all the new tools, the bells and whistles and everything, to me, and people use that expression, I personally try not to use it so much. Who says people are weakest link, everything. I mean, it is true a lot of times, because it doesn't matter how much you try to talk sweet to your computer. If you don't know your password, you can try to break it, but I can go to the office, I can call and talk to Susie, being nice to Susie, especially if Susie is the executive assistant to the CEO. And before you know it, Susie could give you the key to the kingdom. You have access to everything. So, the social engineering piece of it and everything. So I've been using a company called Know Before. They do an
Yeah.
excellent job. Oh, and they kind of incorporate the AI piece of that. When they send an email, it's based on what you have in your email. They're taking to target you and whatever is in the news, or the season, et cetera, et cetera. So the aspect of always keeping your peoples on their toes to understand different type of emails and everything, and also our executive. And that's what you call, you got the spear fishing going on. You have the whaling going on. They just, because they know if they can attack just one big guy, that it's a massive damage that can happen. So therefore, having everybody involved and knowing, do those trainings. And I've been in businesses, and I've heard, with some of my colleagues and people that are in the industry I've talked to, sometimes the C-suites, they don't want to do those.
Yep.
Just like, and you are a prime target for I was like, ooh, this is streetwear. This is what I'm looking for. To me, keeping everybody in that well understanding, it's so important. And for us, and for our industry, you cannot, everybody has to go through that. That's part of the compliance. When you have to fill out those form and everything, it's like, did everybody go to that training? Yes. It's like, and to me, that's the other aspect of AI that's really, it's been great, and and I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And you look at groups like MGM with their breach, and that
Hmm.
was the interesting part, and I'm sure everybody's well aware at this point. But that was social engineering at its finest. And
Oh
you've
yes.
got an organization that is spending all the money that's needed and then some on security in every way. They invest heavily in it, and it just goes to show you that even when you're dropping all the money on it, and you've got all the right tools and you're using them right, that at the end of the day, it's not that it's I guess it is the weakest link. It's sad, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's people are more susceptible. They're it's hard to train them as much. They're more fallible than computers.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to sweet talk, Susie or Sam than just to. And here's the other thing: you look now with AI, and let's say that you don't even have to, like, they were really smart in going and getting a new person who posted on LinkedIn and said, oh, I've just, they saw that they just started working in IT. Boom, that was their in. They very quickly took advantage of that. The fact that nobody knew this new person, and they could be like,
Exactly.
hey, I'm already locked out. Can you, I forgot my password. Can you reset it for me? Cool, boom. And now they're in as somebody in IT. So they've already got, elevated privileges. So that's really smart. But with AI, they're going to be able to go and call up to Susie as the CEO and be like, hey, you know what? They call into the IT department. They're spoofing the phone number. They're mimicking his voice and mannerisms completely, or
Deep
hers.
fake, yes.
And so now it's yeah, deep fake stuff, and it's now perfect. And it's like, well, he called from his number or she called from her number, and it sounded exactly like him. And so
Mhm.
now, the challenge is going to be on that human side. The training has to be, nope, there's got to be something else. We got to call them back. We've got to have a special, phrase. There's got to be stuff, because eventually, identity management and confirmation is going to be it's going to be an important part of security in the future, as this kind of deep fake technology kind of evolves that much further. We need to get that much better as the human species on identifying and combating that, because the bad guys are going to get good fast.
Oh no, I mean that's a very good point that you make there because identity and access management to me it's really really important because with the advent of that, they're so good nowadays with deep fake. You see all those videos out there on YouTube and all the platforms, just like, okay, this is what the senators said, this is what the governor said, this is what the president said, when in fact, that is not true at all.
Yep.
And for people that really don't have the discernment and can tell a difference, and it's easy, to get duped by things like that. So it's important, in my opinion, to really kind of stay grounded. And at times there's so many things you cannot just rely on one source. That's why it's good to as there's so many different so many people that are good out there, and they're always at the forefront of passing that information. It's just like whatever websites you can get your information, whatever influencers that you can follow on X or any other platforms is important because the moment you're gonna try to just like, well, this is what it says. It used to be way back when something was written in a newspaper. Oh, I read it in a book. Okay, yeah. If you had to make sure to write it in a book, it was okay. That this is true. There's no such thing nowadays. So you have to kind of get yourself enough information, and if you're not sure, go with colleagues. That's why it's good to with industry-wide some organizations and help people just you got the OWASP out there, you got that so many ISACA, you got ISSA, there's so many organizations you can join, and then they always have good speakers providing new information to help you sometimes make decisions, because to me having that, it's paramount because it keeps you on your toes. It gets you moving. It's just like you get the latest information and understanding certain things. Sometimes you may have to dig deeper a little bit yourself, but at least it helps you. You know exactly where to go and get that information, at least compare, so you don't just fall prey of those situations.
Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point. And I mean, if you look at it from that lens of, they can fake what a senator, congressman, president says. It used to be one thing to take something out of context, right?
Hmm.
And oh, the reporter, it took me out of context. That's not what I was actually saying. And then when you zoom back out a little bit and you hear the context, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? But now with this new technology, you're able to completely change what they say. And we've seen it. We've seen where they
Hmm.
take celebrities who endorse, like, who endorse a product. They were not endorsing it. They were endorsing a different product, saying different things, and they put in for their product. And this is now a known kind of, scam. So then what happens as we fast forward, and we used to have great sources, like you turn on the news at night and you knew that they were trying to report the facts. But
Hmm.
now you turn on the news and they just seem to be whipping people into a frenzy on one side or the other, and everybody's getting all riled up about stuff, but there's very few facts. And then you got to
Hmm.
skip to the bottom of the article, from a trusted source, to try to get some details, because the top 95% of it now is all, let's whip you into a frenzy. And oh, by the way, here's the actual details. Like, really? It used to be the headlines weren't just like, gotcha, it used to be like, oh, okay, that's interesting, and then the beginning you got the information, and then more supporting stuff. Now it's the exact opposite. But
Completely.
you take that and you go forward now as a society, with social media being so prevalent, people don't go and they don't turn on the TV like they used to and watch the news every night as a family. Now it's there, everybody's on their phones with social media all the time, and they follow these influencers who, if all of the if most of the information, and just like based on quantity, is highly, let's just say, twisted. It's highly, it's on one side or the other, doesn't really matter, but you're not really just getting distilled facts, or kind of the story, as it were, but you're getting somebody's highly tweaked version of it to get you to feel and get you to move. Does that mean that in the future we're going to have the people are just going to start rejecting stuff on social media altogether? Like, you can't listen to anything on social media. And then where does that put people in terms of getting their information? If it went from news, what was in a book, what was in a magazine, what was in a newspaper, what was on the news, was solid fact, right? It was pretty good, even though as humans, we can't report, just facts. We perceive it. So it's not, so great. It's somebody's attempt at being objective on those facts. Now there's no objectivity that I can see.
Hmm.
And if all of the social media is going in these highly, subjective, kind of, let's say, rants, and now everybody's just getting riled up, at what point, and in what way do we get back to a system where people can get information, and get news in a reliable way? What's the future like there? Or am I just missing something?
Well, here's what I think. Unfortunately, way back when, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it probably started in the early 90s, where the news started to become a business. It's not so much that reporting the news and tell you the facts and how it was back in the days. In the 6 o'clock news, you got the anchors and everything that tells you everything. Just now,
CNN's
right now,
24/7 coverage.
so
That's what it did. Yep.
what can I do to get you all riled up about something? And then the moment you do that, you stay glued and everything. And the other thing also is the news, it becomes everybody stay in a silo nowadays. Um,
Yep.
if you moving either left or right or whatever, you're trying to find like confirmation bias.
Yep.
I already have that in me, so I'm gonna go get the news here so I can get that. Fortunately for me, I speak a few languages, so I get to get my news around the world, and I still rely on Reuters. I still rely on AFP. Unfortunately, here, most organizations in the United States, they still get their news there from those organizations, and the AFP does a good job. Reuters and a lot of international, like the BBC. I still listen to that either online. I read the Le Monde, which is a French newspaper, and just try to get that, because a lot of times when you're watching things here in this country, there's already a slant to it, either left or right, or there's an agenda behind it. I really don't know how it's gonna be fixed, because as long as the news is gonna be a business, for me to sell you something and to get you all riled up and just make you either mad and selling you outrage. And I'm just like, and the thing is, it's we think, okay, oh no, he's on my side. It's like, nah, I'm here to make money.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's not what it is. And I'm still very optimistic that there might be ways, and you can see that either with some, I heard with a platform like TikTok where short format, you got people to just really, it's just like, okay, I'm tired of getting news from you. I'm gonna go there, my own source. But the problem with that also is it can become an echo chamber,
Yeah.
where remember back in the days you had the fairness doctrine where if you say something about this person, you have to, they have to come in
Yep.
and rebut whatever you say. But now it's just like I can lie about you, and then when I get sued and everything, just like, boy, I didn't expect anybody to think that that was true, and like what?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't think it's ever gonna get back to the level that we expected or when we were growing up, but. I'm thinking there might be because a way of some new tools, some new platforms or whatever that's yet to be invented that can really bring us to back into the fold. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's
No,
it's
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 tough,
it's
right?
getting tough. Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy because now the business is the business of attention, right? And how do you get and keep that attention? And I do think you're right. It goes back to the 90s when CNN started doing their 24, hour, news cycle. And then it changed the world of news to
Hmm.
now, their goal was how do we keep people's attention for 24 hours? It was fine when we had the war in Iraq that started, and then we're like, well, crap, how do we keep this going? and
Yep.
and then we end up getting to where we are today of everything is about grabbing attention, and it's almost clickbait news, and it's really interesting, and maybe this is where AI comes in the future and kind of saves us, be able to digest all of this and be like, yeah, okay, and be like, here's the story. But then there's got to be, and so that'll be really interesting if there is a kind of news AI that ingests all of the stuff that happened, can see the actual, video of what happened, and then report it and be like, "Yep, here's your objective, report on what happened. Here's what this side's saying. Here's what that side's saying. Here's what was, what we observed, and here's the video." Because with the technology, we've got that. I don't know why it's like lacking,
Oh
and
yeah, it's
it's
there.
all there. And then when we get these massive bills, these 500, 5,000 page, bills that, go through Congress, it's like, well, who's got the time for that? I know. Drop the AI's got time. It takes them five milliseconds to digest it and be like, oh, you're probably going to want to know about this thing that was tucked
Hmm.
in on page 315 in this small paragraph. Oh, thank you. That's really helpful. So maybe AI is our future, savior when it comes to the news and everything else, because I think that's the way of the world, and it's just a matter of appeasing our AI overlords before making sure we're on their good side before they decide we're just decide we're just a liability for the planet and everybody else.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm optimistic. In
Me
all
too.
front, it's just like that. Things could be gloomy at times, but I'm a optimistic person by nature. I believe that sometimes things could be as bad as could be, but there's always a way out. Whether it's come to the news, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's even the nature of where things are going in this country or around the world. I kind of stay a little bit optimistic, and things might our best day are kind of ahead of us.
I
So to speak.
couldn't agree more. I think that's the only way to do it. Um, Robert, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. This was an absolute blast and a pleasure. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about American financing?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just Rohbair Jean. So you can always check me, and we are a mortgage company. So if ever, doesn't matter where you are around the country, and if you need a mortgage, you can always hit us up, americanfinancing.net. We'll find a way to take care of you and make sure you give you the best rate. So, Matthew, I thank you so much for allowing me to have this conversation with you, talk about, a variety of topics. And that was a very, very fun activity. We appreciate that.
It was a pleasure. Until next time, Rohbair.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.